Hi guys, it looks like public sector workers are in for a bit of good news. The new government is planning to meet many of the trade unions' demands and boost wages of hundreds of thousands of staff across a whole range of departments. Many public sector workers have seen their wages frozen or decline in real terms since 2010 when the Tories took over. So this will be seen as good news for staff, but also for a government who wants to see the issue of strikes taken completely off the table. Have a listen.
Yeah, it's that Rachel Reeves, the Chancellor, is likely to sign off on pay rises for all public sector workers with an announcement due in the coming days. We did know that independent pay review bodies had recommended above inflation pay rises for some NHS workers and for teachers, and all of the mood music that had been coming over the last week suggested that the government and the Chancellor was minded to agree with that 5.5% recommendation. What we now know is within the coming days, all public sector workers will be handed a pay rise. We don't know the exact numbers that will apply across the board. There are various pay review bodies that report back to various secretaries of state, and then a decision is made on whether they want to agree with those pay review bodies. I think in reality it would be very hard to see an incoming new Labour government objecting to an independent pay review recommendation, because that would very likely lead to industrial action, something that a Labour government like this one would not want to see in the first few months of its administration, especially given some of the chaos that we saw under the Conservatives when it came to strikes in various sectors, and some of the accusations that we got from Sir Keir Starmer and others while they were in opposition that the government simply wasn't doing enough to settle those strike actions and industrial action. Clearly, what a message we heard from Treasury Ministers last weekend was that there is a cost to not settling, a cost to industrial action, a cost as well to not being able to recruit people into various sectors because of issues over pay. Clearly, though, if it is to be above inflation pay rises for all public sector workers, that will come with a huge cost, multi-billions, many billions of pounds more than the government had been expecting, and that will need to be paid for somehow. We are expecting to hear more about the state of public finances from the Chancellor Rachel Reeves on Monday, but we will probably have to wait until the autumn to find out exactly how the government wants to pay for stuff like public sector pay rises. Clearly, the Conservatives believe that they may opt for something like tax rises.
Okay. Notice the contrast between this government and the previous one. You know, we've seen when you show respect to workers and trade unions, like in Wales and in Scotland, you can avoid many strikes. So there's an adult approach being taken to strike action, as was pointed out in the report. There's a massive cost related to strike action. When public sector workers go on strike, you end up having fewer services being processed. You have people on waiting lists having to wait longer when it comes to the NHS. So it's really important, and it's the government's responsibility to avoid strike action. And of course, how do you avoid strike action? By improving conditions and improving pay. But it's also important to retain staff, not just recruit new staff, but also to retain them. And of course, when it came to the Conservatives, they were engaged in an ideological battle with the trade unions. And we saw them attacking Mick Lynch and the RMT and union bosses all the time in the media and in Parliament itself. So for the Conservatives, they were happy to pick fights with the trade unions. But of course, Labour don't want to do that. Labour are on the opposite side of that. However, we can expect, of course, attacks from the Tories and Reform UK going forward, claiming that Keir Starmer is in the pocket of union barons and stupid rubbish like this. But of course, the point which the media will, of course, bring up from time to time was, how are you going to pay for it? Remember, when the Conservatives were spending huge amounts of money on the Rwanda scheme, the Rwanda gimmick, at no point were they asked how much or how are you going to pay for it. But when it comes to public sector pay, I can guarantee you Rachel Reeves will be asked, how are you going to pay for all of this? Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.